Thank you, Tarun. Siddhi. Um, Very exciting to see that, Siddhi. Thank you, Devyani. Okay, amazing. I'm going to request folks to keep putting in their thoughts about what they're looking forward to gathering in today's conversation. My name is Amina, and I largely work with something called the Circle Labs at the Circle, where we are consistently doing a lot of exciting short term programs across the year for educators, very much like the ones who are in the audience today, who are educators, school leaders, people who wish to someday start schools and after schools of their own. But hopefully, at the center of it all are children, specifically children in low income contexts who deserve a life that is filled with opportunity and choice and dignity. And we work with this community across the year to create programming that helps them understand how can we reinvent this thing that we call schools and how can we do it in the best possible way for children who deserve it the most. And I'm excited to spend the next one-ish hour with you all. And we'll introduce our guest panel in just a bit, but I'm just going to hand it over to Sandeep to also set some context about the work that we do at the Circle.
Thank you so much, Amina. All right, it's good to see everybody. It's good to have all of you here, folks. I'm Sandeep. I work with the Circle. We run an organization that believes deeply that school as we know it just doesn't work for kids, and it really doesn't work for kids from low-income communities. And if we want to be able to prepare kids for an India of today, then we need to figure out how to reinvent this thing that we call school. And so we're on a mission to say, how do you reinvent school so that it works fundamentally better for kids from low-income communities? All of that is rooted in this deep belief that every single child across India has aspiration and dreams, right? And every single child deserves a life that is filled with opportunity and choice. And to be able to deliver on that, well, we have to reinvent schools. We have to reinvent programs that surround schools, and we have to reinvent the teaching workforce so that together we're really able to empower students to be able to climb out of poverty, to be able to change the world around them. To be able to do that, we run a couple of core programs, folks. One of those is we run a network of schools and programs across the country. We do that in partnership with social entrepreneurs. And that network is trying to just provide as many proof points as possible of what reinvented school can be for kids. We have 40 of these across the country right now, and that is a network that is continuing to grow. The second is we operate with the belief that you have to reinvent the teaching workforce if you want to reinvent school. And so we run something called Circle U, which is on a mission to say, how do you equip teachers with the knowledge and skills and the mindsets to be able to reinvent how we think about teaching in classrooms? And the third, which is what you're a part of right now, is we run something called Labs, where we try to take all of these learnings, get them into the hands of educators so that we're able to basically just get doses of inspiration, of tools, of insights into the hands of as many educators across the country as possible and spread some of these learnings from the people that we're engaging with every single day. So that's us in a nutshell. If you are interested after this and saying, you know what, you want to start a school, you want to basically be able to get something off the ground, please reach out to us. Amina will pass out an interest form. We are always basically talking to potential founders and people who really want to be able to say, I want to reinvent this thing that we call school. And we're always trying to be able to go on that journey with people. So we'd love to talk. I'm excited about today's panel. It's going to be a conversation more than anything else. Um, one of the we together with our partners at an organization called Transcend, we've identified these 6 big leaps that we believe all schools need to make to be able to climb into the 21st century. One of those leaps is the leap from a narrow focus on what kids need to a focus on whole child learning, and you'll see that here. And that's the belief that actually, if we really want to be able to prepare kids for a 21st century world, like we have to expand the outcomes that we're focusing on with kids. We have to equip kids with everything that they need to be able to thrive over time. And we're going to dig into a little bit of what that means today. And what does it mean to be able to basically access whole child learning? And what's the role of socio-emotional learning to play in all of that? And I'm excited to introduce 2 incredible people who are going to be anchoring this with me, and we're going to be hearing entirely from them, actually. Um, one of them is Shrey. Oops. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I got muted back. So one is Shrey. Shrey started off his journey as a Teach for India fellow back in 2015. And so he's been at this now for 11 years. He started off teaching in a classroom in Ahmedabad. And then after that, went on to basically, run training for the city through Teach for India. After that, spent some time over at Central Square Foundation in Sanjaya Sikya before eventually making the call that, you know what, he wanted to start a school. And then he joined the circle, um, became one of our 40 social entrepreneurs, and now he's building an incredible, incredible, incredible school in Vikasnagar in Uttarakhand called SURAAH. And that's what they're trying to unlock potential in kids and doing some amazing work to be able to integrate a values-based education with kids. It's good to have you here, Shrey. We're excited to hear from you. Um, the other one is Lina Ashar, who basically doesn't need much of an introduction, but I'm going to give it a shot anyways. Lina is the founder of Kangaroo Kids, which was set up, I believe, now 33 years, back in 93, if I'm not mistaken. So 33 years ago, and has scaled that to many, many schools. She's also set up Billabong High, and most recently, her newest venture, which I find incredibly exciting, Dreamtime Learning, which I'm going to let her tell you about in a few minutes, that I have been incredibly intrigued by over the past few months. In addition to running schools, Lena has also authored books, spaces around how do you explore parenting and learning, and how do you get young people to thrive in today's world. She's passionate about everything from mastery and happiness and abundance and all of that in a child's learning and life. And couldn't think of a better person to be having this conversation with us, not only because of the work that she has scaled, but also because she's just held what kids need at the center of that. And so, Lena, it's good to have you here as well. Thank you for joining us. So we're going to jump in. We're going to just get this conversation started. Before we jump in, though, what I'd love to be able to do is maybe turn this over to you. Give us like a minute or two each, if you don't mind, just on a few minutes each on just your journeys as school founders, and why this topic of whole child learning is so important to you. And then we'll build from there.
Okay, I'll go first. So I started my entire journey in Australia as a teacher in an Australian school, trying to teach high school boys poetry. And I realized that there's a big disconnection because there's no relevance for them. Their brain doesn't understand why they're learning it. And so I made that come alive through poetry and song. And we kind of did metaphors and similes through we don't need no education, we don't need no thought control. And kids like really gravitated towards that. And so I realized I had an art in setting up learning experiences. I then came to India. I was teaching at a school called Jamnabai, quite a prestigious school, 1 to 55 kids, and I had to actually rank them and put the ranks outside my classroom door, 1 to 55, and it was all rote, and the kids the kids' brains were really bored. I was really bored, and I said, it has to be better than this. And so I went to my dad for a loan for Kangaroo Kids, and I started that. Preschool was based in activity-based learning, and a lot of people ask me, why did I sell that to do what I'm doing now? But suddenly I realized, Sandeep, you spoke about outcomes. And in education, we're constantly looking out as to what can we grasp and what can we learn and what can we master. And rarely do we allow education to go in. So we should be looking at incomes, like what's inside of us that needs to get developed for us to thrive in the world outside. And that doesn't sit outside of us, it actually sits inside of us. And so my entire work comes around relevancy. So the kids' brains really have to understand why they're learning something. They have to hook onto it very quickly. It has to be interdisciplinary because we don't learn anything in silo, including social emotional learning. And it has to focus on inner literacy over outer literacy. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you for that, Lena. Shrey?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Very, very excited for this discussion today along with Lina and Sandeep. So yeah, I mean, I started my journey with teaching in 2015, and my class was heavily obsessed with academic outcomes. And quite a lot of children in my classroom, they were actually failing in the most traditional sense. And I was realizing that, of course, they are not doing academically well, but whenever there are these conflicts that used to happen in classroom, some of these children used to become leaders, and they were the ones who were really navigating situations through many times. And that got me thinking that the definition of what we mean success, or what we mean being able to progress developmentally, it's very broad, and it should not be just the academics. That was a seed that got me thinking that our schools today are just focusing on the outer world and for students to master that, but me to think about how about the inner world of a child. And so as I progressed forward in my journey, I was realizing this term we call subject. And I was like, if subject is so central to our teaching and learning and school, I was wondering what is the object then? And then the object becomes our students. And then I was wondering that, this kind of a dynamics where we have subject and object, it happens that the curriculum is expected to be happened to the child. But I was wondering all these years, what will happen if we flip that, if our children become the subject? What if they turn the mirror inward? And that's where the whole idea of what we call Swagyan came up. And yeah, we're very happy to talk more about it, how that looks like at a school.
Yeah, thanks for that, Shrey, and thank you both for that. Would love to hear more about that in just a minute. Folks, I'll tell you what. Let's try to bring this into practice. Let's just try to make this real fast, right? So, like, we hear this whole child learning, socio-emotional learning. It's a term that's used really commonly, right? In fact, if I were to open this up to an audience of about 100 people right now, we'd probably have about 140 definitions that would come up. And I'd love to basically bring this home to you and actually say, like, tell us what this looks like in practice. And in particular, if I had to go like a step further, like, what do you see in a classroom when you see whole child learning and social emotional learning coming to life? Like, help us bring this to life and make it really tangible.
All right. So my core is in the learning design experience, right? So right from the literature that kids study, which is say Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, they learn about third world and first world diets, right? Social emotional learning is being sensitive to the needs of others and the self. The kids will learn about from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory about different parenting styles. So what is indulgent parenting? What is authoritative parenting? What is authoritarian parenting? And then they go through the characters and they figure out what are their backstories of parenting and how has it not served the over-entitled kids that are in the characters in the book. So throughout the curriculum, whether it's in math, we'll do simple things like kids need to understand their brain, they need to understand behavior. So why does somebody label something as $5.99 and not $6? How does that psychologically speak differently to the brain? If we're doing math, we'll look at even things like branding. Why do fast foods use red and yellow? How does that speak to the brain? How does that drive your behavior? So in every sense of everything you're doing, whether it's math, science, English, history, firstly, none of these subjects should be in isolation. They're all integrated. And they teach you about the psychology of the self, the psychology of behavior, teaches you about your values, what are your drivers, what are your motivations, what are your deep questions that you have about the world and your place in it. How do you feel awe? Because we've all kind of lost that. How do you feel connected? And how do you raise the levels of your neurochemical transmitters in a way that serves you long term? So, a lot of us have been taught that by receiving, we feel really happy, right? We get a gift, I get an iPhone and I feel really happy. But we actually show kids what happens to the neurochemical transmitters, the good ones. They spike and then they fall. And then we teach them how they need to have a larger spike to reach that level again, right? So you need to have more. You can't just get a second iPhone and feel the same level of happiness. Versus when you give. I mean, why is Sandeep, Shrey, and I involved in what we're doing? Because when we actually have purpose, when we have meaning in our lives, and we're in the process of learning how to contribute, to lift, to grow someone else and ourselves, that's where the neurochemical transmitters come into our body for very, very long periods of time. So teaching the kid how their nervous system works and how to keep it stabilized and regulated should be a core part of all learning.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the integration that you dug into it, right? That's actually what actually brings it to life. Shrey, would you add to that? And yeah, what does it look like in a classroom for you?
Sure, Sandeep, and very, very similar. Like the integration is the key for us as well. What we never wanted is SEL to become a standalone session where students are neatly sitting in a circle and filling out a emotion worksheet to say that, hey, I feel calm. And because that they might feel that that is what is expected out of them, and then go about doing their maths. And these two worlds never touch each other. But what we thought is like, how can we have Swagyan, as you call it, be filled with the content that they learned. So a concrete example is that, for example, when we were doing disaster management topic with our grade fifth students, they were talking about not just the earthquake of Gujarat and what happened there. They were talking about the landslides that happens in Uttarakhand every single year, and that's what we call Jagat Gyan, like very contextualized EVS for that matter. But also, besides that, the next session that happens is where we ask our students, hey, what did you feel? How would you feel if you
Mm.
were the child in that village? And this village is just like, this is a neighboring village to us. And so we are bringing in the news clipping, we're bringing in the video so that students can really, really feel what it means to be there in that disaster. And that is where we feel our children are able to go deep. And it's the same session, same topic, but also we feel that both the world of Jagat Gyan and Swagyan, gets activated. And as you mentioned, Sandeep, of course, SCL would have different definitions, but the way we look at it is two ways. One is the understanding of self, which we call self-awareness and self-management, and the awareness of others, which is like social awareness and the relationship skills that they hold. So it has just two components, just simple how we have put up it on a rubrics as well to be able to further define SCL for us.
Yeah, I love that. I love how both of you actually touched on something that's quite common, which is like, what is my relationship with people around me and how do I find a bit of purpose? And that was actually a common thread, even though you didn't call it that through both of your responses. And like, how am I thinking about others outside of myself? How am I thinking about like being able to think about my role in a wider society? Um,
Can I
and
just add something,
100%,
Sandeep, before
please.
you,
Yeah.
one of the things, so I do a Founders Day note to deepen so that everyone in the organization understands why we exist. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you look at them, and when you look at this, social safety and the lower parameters, and he ended his book at self-actualization. But his diaries actually talk about a deeper, a higher level called self-transcendence, right? Where you transcend the self and you look at humanity as one, the interconnectedness of everyone and all sentient beings, and how do you bring that together for harmony and peace for humanity and for the planet?
Yeah. Wow. That's an intense and incredibly evolved way of looking at it. And I love that way of looking at it. Look, I mean, I think SEL is used so much as a term that we tend to believe and kind of accept that everybody just buys into it now, and yet I think the definitions that you both offered are just much more nuanced. And what I'd love to do is just ask you, like, tell us the inflection point if you can. What made you believe this? Like, what got you to believe so deeply, actually, that, school and the purpose of school and the purpose of education needs to be about more than just self. It needs to be about something much larger. It needs to be about more than just a narrow set of academic outcomes. Like, what got you to buy into that? Was there an inflection point? And if not, then what was it that really got you to believe in it over time?
Well, for me, when Google came in, it shifted my perspective, and then when AI came in, it shifted it all over again, right?
How so?
Sorry?
How so?
Well, firstly, when Google came in, you didn't need to actually remember the response, the answer. You needed to be able to get to the answer and draw it out. So research and stuff like that became a lot more part of what we were asking kids to do. When AI came in, a few things are happening. One is that you no longer need to know the answer. You just need to ask the right question. So how do you go about teaching kids how to, and we teach kids how to prompt, because no matter what people are saying about AI, we're all using it. We will be using it in the workforce and everywhere else. So we actually teach kids that if you prompt this, what is it, the outcome? Whereas if you prompt this, what is the outcome?
Hmm.
So, and AI is also going to get us more polarized. Google started that, and then so we teach kids how, if you believe in aliens or you don't believe in aliens, how does your algorithm change? Like, what does YouTube start throwing at you? And the problem is that what it throws at you deepens, what we call cognitive bias and cognitive belief. So if you believe in aliens, everything will come at you that makes you believe in aliens even more. And if you don't believe in them, everything will come at you. And a scarier thing is Trump. If you like Trump, everything comes to you pro-Trump. And if you don't like Trump, everything comes to you anti-Trump. And how do we get kids to understand that? So we actually, younger kids, we do the alien thing. With older kids, we make them watch Trump, the same event, the same thing that happens from a CNN and a Fox perspective. And how do these perspectives have absolute opposite ends of the spectrum of storytelling? Or how does Israel and Palestine work? How are the stories so divergent, and what are the dangers of that single story? And how do you see both stories and come together? So we'll do very interesting things. AI is here, right? But say, for example, if you're a vegetarian and non-vegetarian, we'll get kids to say, okay, do you believe in being vegetarian or non-vegetarian? Then we'll do a very interesting thing. We'll put them in opposite, we'll give them the opposite argument to have to come in and argue. So now they have to use AI not just to get information, but they have to get it to argue from an opposite perspective. So they start understanding how all of this works, how we're deepening our biases and our beliefs, and how we're getting more and more polarized. And if for humanity to move forward, we need to be more connected. So I hope that explains why I shifted everything. It's not about external mastery anymore because content is available. So it's about inner mastery. I can learn anything I want to as long as I can focus. I can learn anything I want to as long as I'm disciplined. I can learn anything as I want to as long as I'm not stuck on Candy Crush and I understand what Candy Crush is doing to my brain versus, learning something new is.
Yeah, I love that. So multiple technological shifts, and what does that mean actually for the inner work that I need to be able to thrive in today's world? Shrey, would love to hear from you as well.
Sure, Sandeep. So your question is what was that moment or experience that made me value SCL overall? And
Yeah.
yeah, I would like to attribute that to my experience at the Gandhi Ashram. And one fine day when we were there at one of the retreats, I remember one of the days is about seva, some kind of a shramdan, and we all were there with a broom cleaning this road. And I realized, when we are cleaning that uh, road, a lot of questions came to me, as in, I'm going to clean this, but what will happen to this road tomorrow? And it is only going to get dirty again. So I was like, what is the whole point of me doing this work and brooming this today? And that is when I realized, because then Jayesh Bhai, our mentor, he mentioned that, hey, it is not that you are going to change anything significant by cleaning this, but as you are cleaning the outer thing, can you also reflect what are you cleaning within you, your own dirt, as you might have anything that you feel is impure, you want to settle that in, or maybe accept any of your hidden part. So actually focus on that and not on the road, because road is definitely going to maybe get clean in the morning or get dirty, and that's a whole cycle. You're just right here reflecting on yourself. And that really got me thinking about that. The real work is actually inside, because the outer world is like almost manifested by a lot of invisible forces. And yeah, that was very deep as an experience as a very, very early educator. And so when this whole idea of reimagining what education could be, I was just thinking of, so probably schools have this very whole focus on the outer world, academics for that matter. And as much as that matter, I was thinking of what would it mean to also bring in that swagyan perspective, that head and heart into our learning. And so yeah, that's where I feel that it's not just how much academic stuff our students are able to understand, but also the question which Jayesh Bhai asked, how are the children treated, or kind of experiences that is made available for them in the school that matters more, I believe, and hence the importance to SEL.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story, Shrey. Thank you for sharing that. Um, try to help us get applicable for people now, right? Like, what I'd love to be able to get into is what are practices that people here today with us should and can start to think about to be able to better integrate within their school? And what are concrete practices or concrete tools that you would recommend people to start doing who are running schools, who are teachers, people who are working with schools to be able to provide a more integrated, holistic, whole child experience for kids? You've touched on a few. You've touched on integration. You've touched on basically like kids' relations with others. But if you had to bring this down to practices, like what would be two or three that each of you would recommend based off of your experience?
I think I've already covered it, but teach kids how their brains work, right? So one of the things is a lot of kids are are fearful in school, either of a bully or a teacher or whatever. And if kids can kind of understand what their amygdala is, how it works, why it once existed, why it's no longer relevant, how you can calm it down, why it gets excited, what makes it bigger, what gets it smaller. There's so many beautiful stories out there. If, somebody just messaged that I'm an early childhood educator. There's, why does Ruby have a worry? Ruby has a worry, and it goes into, giving your worry or your thought color and emotion and size and expression, and the beautiful things you can do with kids that just get them to be able to start articulating their inner world. So I mean, for anyone who wants more understanding, very, you know, happy to take them through a sort of learning design that would help them have kids have a better understanding and integrate it across all subjects. Sandeep, we also offer, I mean, SEL free of cost for any school that's a really not-for-profit school. And Priyanka's on call. She can you can just get in touch with her and know more about what we offer. We do offer it as a separate one subject because we have to. We can't, give the whole embedded curriculum, but it should, as much as possible, be embedded. One of the things we don't even think about is autonomy. Every human need, one of the highest human need is for independence and autonomy, and yet we give kids zero of that. So one of the things that we've done with our curriculum is everything, the academics at this times 10 level gets done in half the day. And so kids have the second half of the day for choice-based learning. What are you interested in? What do you want to learn about? Because we, three of us on the screen, know that when we're really interested in something, we can learn the heck out of it.
Really?
Right? So for me, it's brain science and it's behavioral science and stuff like that. So, but we never give kids the opportunity to go deep down a rabbit hole of something that they're really interested in, because that's where engagement happens. And for me, social emotional learning is not social and emotional learning. It embodies everything, which means kids are not learning for compliance. The schools are not set up for compliance. I think Shrey told a story of how the naughty kids are the good kids. I was a naughty kid in class. Like, your rebellious kids are actually the kids who are thinking a little differently. So how do you honor them and value them and bring them to the forefront? And how do you get kids to learn for what really drives them, rather than for the award or the grade or anything else? And I think one of the things schools can start doing is not putting up their top 10 and their toppers across the board, that we can start honoring and valuing everything, because what we tend to measure gets valued, but we never measure how kind am I? How much do I think about humanity in the world? How much in awe am I of nature? Things like that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Beautifully articulated. Shrey?
Yeah. Talking about the practical aspect of SEL, it is important, I feel, just to be able to understand how SEL could look like developmentally, which means that for a child of 3 age to, let's say, almost like a 6 age, SEL, if it becomes too verbal or abstract, that becomes difficult. So what happens is that we can more focus on the body awareness in the early year children. And the best one is our teacher. So what kind of experience teachers are receiving at school is very, very helpful. If they are under stress, they will just replicate that with the children as well. And I think early years also need a teacher to just hold the child, say that, oh, you're feeling scared. That's okay. To be able to co-regulate it with the children, that's so much important. And I feel in a lot of sense, the adult becomes the curriculum in that class of early year education that I feel. And and that shift when we talk about even, let's say, primary age, I feel primary age is the time when students have those perspectives where they can actually name the feeling as well as talk about the why they're feeling certain way. And what and how we go about that is we have this transdisciplinary projects that we do, which is like if there is any concepts that you take to the children, just think about how can children turn the mirror inside in that. And here's a concrete example. So last year we were doing this project called Bara Anaj, 12 seeds with the children. And from the Jagat Gyan perspective, they were understanding the traditional farming technique that used to be in their village. And it was around biodiversity. It was around how do you put in seeds of 12 different kinds that helps you make the soil the most fertile. But then they turned in to say that what does it mean to be inclusive in our village? What does it mean to be inclusive in our school? Is there a moment where you felt excluded? And the kind of deep insights that came in. One of our child, he actually suffers from asthma, so he often forgets things as well. And if he was very vulnerable in that circle. He's like, I actually feels a lot of time excluded when my peer says that, he cannot answer. Rehne do, let's go ahead. I can answer, ma'am. So like I feel excluded. And then he went further up to say that actually, I also feel that I have done that to my youngest brother who is in LKG. And I have also done the same, but it's the same seed of exclusion, but it doesn't really help any party that is, involved in that circle or in that room. And so that kind of how do you turn a topic inward is something, it's a very, very simple technique, but has been very deep for us so far.
Yeah, thank you for that, Shrey. Looks, I'm going to offer one more question, then we're going to open this up to the audience to be able to ask questions and weigh into this conversation. We've already got some stuff coming over into the chat box as well. Fill in the blanks. I would define an excellent education for kids as blank. I would define an excellent education as kids as blank. Like fill in the blank for us. What would be your definition?
I'm thriving in the world, regardless of what happens externally.
I love that.
One that makes me think, one that helps me feel, and one that helps me do things with my hands.
I love that too.
There's a very
Yeah,
interesting
please.
book. We've so far looked at SEL as, as resilience being great. There's a
True.
really good, great book. I've forgotten the author's name, is difficult to pronounce, called Anti-Fragility. And what he speaks about is that a child who's going to really thrive in the world thrives in the face of adversity. Because something adverse happens to you and you actually find the opportunity in that. And like, so COVID happens. What did I do during COVID? I interviewed 100 thought leaders in the area of neuroscience, behavioral science, and the future context of the world to build the blueprint for Dreamtime Learning. So no matter what, because people like Seth Godin or Angela Lee Duckworth won't be available to me normally, but they will during COVID because they're all sitting at home, open to the interview and so how do you no matter what's happening, wars, global warming, everything, how do you find a way of seeing it as an opportunity for me to raise myself higher?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay, folks, we're at the 25-minute mark. We've been talking for 25 minutes. We've been going for about 35 minutes. I want to keep this a 50-50 discussion. That was my commitment coming into today. And so I'm going to stop asking questions. I'm going to ask everybody to come on over to the chat box. We're going to take 2 or 3 minutes. And as you're over in the chat box, what I'm going to ask you to do is just put one reflection that's on your mind, but also a question. And then I'm gonna give you the unenvious task of having to distill those questions and to be able to basically throw some at us, and we're gonna pick some and just open them up. Yeah. So everybody, come on over to the chat box with me. We're gonna take 3 minutes right now, and I'm gonna get a little bit of music going, and just one reflection, one question, most sitting with you as you're listening to these two incredible leaders, and then we're gonna open it up.
मेरे हम कदम है ये ज़मीं, मेरे हम कदम है ये ज़मीं, मेरे हम कदम है ये ज़मीं, मेरे हाथ में आकाश है, ना तो कारवां की तलाश है, ना तो कारवां की तलाश है, ना तो हम सफर की तलाश है, ना तो कारवां की तलाश है। टूटा मेरा मैं इश्क जला कर आ गया, ना तो कारवां की तलाश है, ना तो हम सफर की तलाश है।
रात दी गल सुनियो सुनियो वे, रात दी गल सुनियो सुनियो वे, कोई ना चार चुफेरे, पिछे ना मुड़ियो मुड़ियो वे, पिछे ना मुड़ियो मुड़ियो वे, रातां दे काले काले चेहरे, डर डाडा डसे वे, और मंजिल हसे वे, आहट से डरियो डरियो वे, आहट से डरियो डरियो वे, खौफ के अंदर लगे डेरे, हौले से चलियो चलियो वे, हौले से चलियो चलियो वे, रातां दे काले काले चेहरे, डर डाडा डसे वे, हाय, और मंजिल हसे वे, डर डाडा डसे वे, और मंजिल हसे वे, हाय।
हाँ, क्या है ये कमाल बस पूछना पूछना, मेरा हाल चाल बस पूछना पूछना, अल्लाह बनाल करा नाल करा नाल करा, मैं तो ओड़ा 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 वेख जरा मेरे अंदर हुंदी शूशा शूशा, हर वेले हंसा कवा हूँ हाँ रोशन रोशन हो गया ठंड सीने विच भरी मैं गया मैं गया। हाँ, हाँ, मैं गया मैं गया मैं गया।
Okay.
रात भर
Should we start taking some of these? I'm going to give you minutes to be able to consolidate. While we do, I'm just going to take a couple that are standing out, and then we'll wait for you to come back. But I think like a couple of people have asked, like, how do you build teacher capacity to be able to do this? And I think like, what are your practices from being able to basically teach teachers how to do this and to hold this? And would love for one of you to respond to that. Yeah, or both of you.
I scripted. I have
Yeah.
curriculum in a box and I script it because there's no way a parent, a teacher understands all the neuroscience and behavioral science to be able to implement it or speak about it to kids. And I know it's frowned upon, but I script everything from this is the question, these are the expected responses, and how do you then respond to that with a whole lot of permutations, combinations.
Yeah, I love it. Planning it to the T and being able to basically give teachers a lot of preparation and know what to go in with. Yeah, Shrey?
Yeah, we start a day by sitting together for 20 minutes. One part of that is SCL, where we ask
Mm,
how teachers are doing that day. How do they want to or kind of visualize their day? And so that is like, centering them into their own self. That is very, very helpful. And why? Because we just feel that it is very difficult for a teacher to facilitate this kind of a inner work if they have not done themselves. And if they haven't really named their feeling, if they haven't named their fear, they will only become performative and they can manage the process, I feel, but they will not actually inhabit what it really means to, facilitate this Swagyan space that we say. And children can feel that, I feel.
yeah, so basically you get teachers to experience what you want children to experience and get them to really model that and go through the experience themselves. Um, piece around integrating into the day, I think, has come up a couple of times now, right? And so, like, let's lean into that. Like, how do you actually, a lot of questions, like, how do you get this integrated into a school day? How do you get it integrated into a week? Like, you talked about at the lesson level, Lena, but I think there's like, if we don't want to do it as like a separate SEL block, like, what are different approaches to integrate it to within the day, into culture? Like, how do we think about this more broadly?
So I'll quickly go back to the same example I gave. Say, take Charlie and the
Mm,
Chocolate Factory, right? And take one of the
mm,
characters, just one. So I'm going to take
mm,
Veruca Salt. Most people know Veruca Salt. She's
mm,
raised in a world where every desire is immediately fulfilled by her parents, that they don't have any boundaries, they're indulgent parenting, and any discomfort she has is moved out of bounds, right? So what
mm,
happens to her psychologically? Kids explore in groups that she doesn't have a tolerance for frustration. She doesn't have any emotional resilience, and she doesn't know how to delay gratification. And we teach them, I mean, there's a beautiful video on delayed gratification, the marshmallow story, that kids can watch in 6 minutes and understand what that means. And what's kids then start introspecting that they themselves are growing up in environments where, boredom is eliminated quickly. You can get rid of boredom in a second today, right? And why
mm,
is boredom really important? Why is discomfort really important? Why is constant stimulation not great for your brain or your body? And when gratification is instant, what happens? And how is resilience built? It's built by waiting, by doing the hard stuff, by problem solving, by discomfort. And so if you look at the world, it's getting more and more emotionally fragile, and we want to like kind of get kids to stop that through actually the curriculum. So it's not isolated. Plus, half the day is autonomous. So they actually have agency. We need to understand that we have agency over our own lives, that we can make decisions and we can do what we enjoy doing.
mm. Yeah. Shay, would you add to that?
Sure. The question is like, how do we integrate SCL in terms of structures we
Yeah.
run? Yeah. So we run about 6 week of projects that we do. And in those projects, we try to bring out the different aspect of Jagat Gyan and Swagyan, as well as Khoj and Moj. Um, and so facilitators, they are free to say that how much SCL component or this inner work component would be a part of that project. But
Mm,
once it is there, different sessions become SEL focus. Some becomes Jagat Gyan focus. And so, for example, if they were doing a project around Ashoka Rock Attic, and they could understand, yes, it is there right in their village. In the SEL part, they are reflecting what does it mean for something to stay for thousands of years. If they were to leave behind a message, what would they write? And so that becomes inner focus. And so that is like project is one structure. Two more, we do morning circles with children as well. So they start their day naming their feeling, connecting with each other. So that happens. And lastly, we also do learning circles, especially with our now middle schoolers, so that they can name all the transition that is happening in their life. So I think that really helps. And lastly, I would say assessment. Assessment is also the other thing. A lot of schools, they look at SEL assessment, also something like academic assessment, to say that, oh, let us just like, at the end of the term, let's see where students are. What SEL assessments need to be is longitudinal in nature. Throughout the year, one needs to see. And it's not just one source, which is like what teacher are saying, but can we also involve our children to speak up? What are their reflection? And yeah, lastly, I would say it's also important to understand that the growth in terms of SEL is quite slow, quite non-linear as well, because a child might be all well at school but might get into certain behaviors at home which is not very helpful. But it is not just that the child is kind of not integrated, but it just takes time for them to really show behavior in different context. So yeah, all of those, I think awareness really help us as educator to also have patience with the children as they grow naturally.
Can I add one more suggestion to all the educators that I think the biggest learning has to happen by parents, because the parents are the ones who are allowing the overstimulation, they're giving the overpressure. The disconnection is a lot with parents today, and so HarperCollins is publishing my book later in November, Parenting for a World That's Already Here. But what I would suggest to every educator is make sure you have a founder's desk note going out once a week around why are you not pushing writing? Why are you not doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you focusing here? So parents start getting drip fed and starting to change their context in the home.
Yeah. Do you have any other advice about what parents need to be doing, Lena? Because that's actually a question that's come up many times in the chat boxes. What is the role of parents?
So the other thing is we put all our independent learning work, what's usually called as homework, around the
Mhm.
parent and child doing something together. So if we're teaching water in grade one, the parent takes the child to the supermarket because we've taught kids, right, from an environmental point of view to create one bottle of plastic water. What happens to the environment? Like how many bottles of water do you use to create that? Blah, blah, blah.
Mm,
It's going to actually look at water to understand what's the difference between sparkling water, spring water, bottled water, and the price points of all of that, and the branding and stuff like that. So parents and kids have to do that together. If in grade two they're doing plants, they go to the chemist together to look at which properties of plants are there in medicines. So I think we have to create opportunities for parents and kids to work a little bit together. And we send a note home every day, independent for each child as to what was done in that day. So parents and kids have a point of conversation around how the kid felt in school rather than what he did in school.
mm. Shay, would you add anything to that around like kind of stuff that you think you've tried to get parents to be able to adopt, to be able to basically support what's happening within the school?
Sure, Sandeep. I think one aspect is parents, and also like why SEL is so important for the community, for the children and the parents for that
Mm,
matter. And I feel that when we look at SEL, it's about going in, and it is so important because the narrative that the community and the parents hold is that the context or the village that they are part of, it is something to escape from, because if you want to build something in your life, you have to be in the city. So why
yeah.
we do SEL and the kind of a work we want to do with parents is for them to really root themselves in their own identity as Pahadi, and for them to be
Mm,
able to say that what is going in me, my identity, and what is going around me in my hills, and what part can I
mm,
play. And so as they root themselves, they will also give that experience to their child to say that your context, your village is your biggest asset. So yeah, so
mm.
just learn about those canals that flows here, learn about those traditional farming practice that happens here. I think that is why we do SEL, and why we want to get in parent support as well in all of this work.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah,
An interesting
we've
thing
s-
happens when kids go home and they tell their parent, your style of parenting is authoritative or it's authoritarian, and this is what the outcomes can be for me. And that's really powerful.
yeah, totally. I mean, we'll start this question off with you if that's okay. There's a lot of questions here around like, what does this look like across different age groups? What does it look like for really young kids? And then what does it look like as kids get older? And I wonder if you could start to paint a picture of what that progression might look like. And then Shrey, I'd love to bring you in after that as well.
So take the example I gave you why Ruby has a worry, right? It's a
Yep.
storybook. What often happens is parents don't know, like they've read the storybook to kids. Now, what are the activities you can do
Mm,
through the storybook, right? And these activity sheets go home for parents and kids to do together. So the parents actually get a script as to what can be done with this, and
mm,
how do you work with the kids with this resource, because
mm,
that's what parents actually need. Parents are hard pressed for time. They've got a million things going on, and if you give them the tools, then some of them will engage. So that's with younger kids. With older kids, the kids take the learning home. The kids take the learning home, and parents come to us with very powerful things. Like a parent came to me I was in a mall, and I said to my kid, I'm feeling hungry. And the kid says, but that's because you're standing in front of this red and yellow McDonald's sign. Let's move away from this because that's what's stimulating your appetite. Let's move away from this and then still see whether you're hungry in 15 minutes and then find you something that's more nutritious to eat. When kids go home with this, parents are like, wow.
very true. Yeah, very true. Shrey, anything you would add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I did touch upon this earlier, but just that maybe I'll repeat is that, I mean, SEL, as we also see, let's say even 1 year old in our home, it's about
Mm,
how can this adult who spend the time with child can be the most nurturing and provide unconditional love to the child. And that it's very easy to do with your own child, but also I think as a teacher, they need to hold that kind of a unconditional love for all the children. So a lot of common narrative as in ye galat hai, ye sahi hai, this is mistake, this is not, has to go away. And it just SEL is all in the early years. I'm talking more because when we say SEL, a lot of structured program comes into our mind that is possible for the, let's say, primary and middle schoolers. But I'll touch upon early years again, just like the kind of a tone that a teacher uses, the kind of a presence she has in front of the child, how responsive she is in the class. I think all of that really matter, and that is what SEL is for the child in the early years. Because children in the early years, they don't run reflection circle and learning circles much, but it is the adult who needs to name the emotions through stories, through drawings, and yeah,
mm.
basic vocabulary like happy, sad, angry, that helps in the early.
Yeah, thanks for that. Good for it, Lina. Yeah.
Yeah, Sandeep, anyone who wants a couple of free resources just to get their minds stimulated in what they
Mm,
can do with parents, if you send me email addresses or whatever, I'll make sure I send a couple of resources out.
that would be amazing. Thank you. You were going to say something else? Go ahead. No? Oh, okay, that'd be amazing. Thank you for that. I guess there's one last set of questions, and then we're going to try to steer this to a close. But there's a lot of questions around like, how do you measure this? And it is a big question for people that are constantly thinking about how do I show progress to parents? How do I show progress to donors? How do I show progress to others around me? How do we then learn from this and make sure that we're quantifying it? So, how do you measure any of this? And what are indicators that you track to know whether or not you're actually building this?
We've got measures in the curriculum.
Mm,
Um, so if is an acronym and you say R is for reflective learning, you actually
mm,
have a portfolio of learning that parents see. That's your measure. I think we need to change from grades and to portfolios of learning. So it's all within that I'm reflective. And one of the really exciting sometimes I drop in when kids are doing students lead the conferences, and the reflective learning example that the kid put in was around the Big Bang Theory. And I said to the child, well, how is that reflective of your, I mean, how is that? So the kid said, because till now when I went to church, I thought that creation only happened one way, but now I'm open to other possibilities, right? And you're talking about a grade 2 kid. I'm open to thinking about other possibilities around creation, and those are measures of that through a portfolio.
yeah, simple way to do it. Shrey, have you been able to institute anything at all?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we
Yeah.
have our rubrics in place, which when we say heart domain, it has two things,
Mm,
the identity and the relationship. So it is helpful, at least as an institute, for you to define what SEL is for you. So we have these two components on level 1, 2, 3, 4. which actually defines a behavior we hope our children will be able to showcase. And one concrete way we do it or have done in the past is we have said that, hey, here's a scenario. If you were to resolve it, how would you go about showing it, let's say, in a theatrical form? And so students were at it. And we were like, yeah, we would love to see what you come up with. What they didn't know is we weren't really assessing their end product, but how would they go about doing it in the team? And so about more than 50% of their marks or the assessment was about how did they go about a day or two going and preparing for it. And so we could really see them live their behavior among each other. Were there conflicts? Were they able to resolve those? Who is being the leader here? Who is oppressing? Who is so all of those we were able to see. So that is one way to give them tasks and to be able to see their behavior throughout.
Yeah, thank you for that, Shrey. We're going to close with one final question, folks, for both of you. One piece of advice that you've got for everybody here. You've got educators, you've got teachers, you've got teacher trainers on this call, you have school leaders, school founders. Clearly, from all the questions, you've got a group of people that are really trying to get this right. One piece of advice is they take some of their first steps to be able to venture more into that. Like, what would you offer?
I'll offer samples of anything. I'm here to raise human consciousness and happy to help anyone on that journey. I think if we just shift the whole idea of education as raising consciousness, I think we'll have a far better world and a more peaceful one as well.
Yeah, I agree with that, Lina. Thank you. Shrey?
Yeah, I mean, I would say SEL starts from you. So go sit and meditate every day for 15 minutes. I think you will go deep into your own patterns and your own awareness. And from that space, we'll be able to also do something great for our children.
Yeah, thank you for that, Shrey. Lovely, lovely closing thoughts. Okay, folks, we're going to bring this conversation to a close. I'm going to hand this back over to Amina in just a minute. Before you all take off, would love for you to come back over to the chat box one final time as a show of gratitude to these two incredible people who spent the last hour with us, talking about all that it takes to build this. One takeaway, come on back over to the chat box. One big thing you're leaving with, one aha, one insight, just one line over in the chat box. And we're going to do that to be able to show these two incredible leaders just how much we've learned from them over the past hour. And we will close with that. So leave it open for a couple of minutes, and then Amina will take us forward. And to both of you, a very, very big thank you. This has been an incredible conversation. I'm learning a lot. I'm taking away a lot. So thank you not only for this conversation, but for all of the work that you're doing, and clearly for the incredible people that you both are. So.
Baby, down in the sky turn pink. And is this all it's gonna be? Gold dust shimmers on my feet, and they lay me down in the sky turn pink.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your just notes of gratitude. And I think I'm echoing so much of what is already being said on the chat, Lina and Shrey. I think you both come in with not just so much information around how educators can embody this and take it to their spaces, but also you both model this out so much in the way you've been addressing all the questions and how deeply you've thought about even the smallest interaction in your learning spaces. And I'm deeply grateful that you took the time and you came and addressed all of us, and to everyone who listened in so intently and kept the chat so alive with all your questions. And I'm getting requests for how we can, take these. Is there a recording? They want to share it with their educators and their team members. So there's so much excitement around what you've shared. And I know this is a topic that's so close to all the educators. So I'm again, Lina, Shrey, and also Sandeep, thank you so much for holding this conversation and diving deep into something that's so relevant and impactful for the kids that we want to work with and the kids that we want to shift life and learning outcomes for. Folks, we keep doing these forums across the month, and you'll keep getting updates from me on that. As you close for the evening and you also just head out of the session, please do fill out a poll that's coming up on your screen. But again, thank you so much for spending the time with us, Lina and Shrey. Cannot thank you enough for the time that you've spent. Thank you so much. Do fill in a poll on your way out, and we're good to close. Thanks again, guys.
Bye. Thanks, Sandeep. Bye, Shrey.
Thank you.